This past Sunday, I was asked to help out with our religious education class, our pre-K and kindergartners, and it's always a homily every time you do that. And it was awesome, and we were able to, the teachers had said, Father, if you wouldn't mind talking to them about, the holy water and the sign of the cross when we come into the church and the genuflection. And so happy to do that, and I did. And so we were talking about, when we came in, we were looking at, saying, well, in the tabernacle, is Jesus, and Jesus is a king. And you might have seen, in other movies or something like that, where when people come into the presence of a king, they usually will go down on one knee as a sign of respect and reverence. And so they seemed to get it and stuff, and so then they practiced. They had the chance to practice coming in. And one kid said, it turned to his father, can I add something to it? Very nervous at that point. But I said, yeah, sure. Why don't you show me what you're thinking, And so he comes in and he genuflects and he's down on one knee, and then he bows his head and he throws his arms out like this. And just stays there for and was praying. And I was just again, from the mouth of babes, from the mouth of children, he got it, right? And they get it as young people always do, I think, when we show them what we're doing. And so, yeah, again, I just preached about that not too long ago, the genuflecting when we come into church. And because, again, we recognize the kingship of Christ, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful sign that we do because Christ is King. And again, that young man got it probably better than certainly myself, and probably better than lots of us sometimes. What is Christ King of? I think is a question. Is it just the kingdom that's later? I think that's kind of maybe a question I'd like to just think about a little bit tonight. Is the kingdom of Christ just something later that happens, when he comes back at the end of time? And the answer to that, of course, is no. I think we've reflected on that. I'm sure you've all probably realized that. Jesus, first of all, gives us a clue in the gospel. He doesn't say at the end of time you will be with me in paradise. He says to the good thief who has this perfect act of love and faith to Jesus, he says, today you will be with me in paradise, right? So the kingship of Christ is already happening. And that's what this whole celebration this week is about. That's what the church teaches, right? That the kingship of Christ is not something that just takes place later. It's happening now. And I think one of the things that you see, I think, when you read the Gospels, I think sometimes Jesus is portrayed or thought of as, I don't know, as deferring himself, completely. And there is a sense, there is a hiddenness. Christ doesn't go around, of course, I'm not saying he rides around in chariots or he says, everyone, you must genuflect to me, or any of those kinds of things. But I think sometimes people, maybe when we read the gospel, we don't recognize or pay attention, or maybe we don't want to recognize, he is clear everywhere about his authority. He doesn't lead with that all the time. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he goes in and flips the temple and money changers and drives the people out of the temple. Sometimes he leads to particular people, particular conversations. It's very clear right from the start, I am the king. I am the Son of God. He leads with that, but not always. There's a restraint there. But he never, sometimes there's this weird thing, when we have power or authority in our own lives, that we act like we don't, right? That we kind of lie to ourselves, or we try to completely downplay it or act like it's not there when it is. That's not what Christ does. Christ is clear that he has this authority everywhere, and he always is talking about it. Again, sometimes up front, sometimes it comes later. He doesn't, talk to, every single person that way. But again, it's clear. Christ recognizes and sees that he has this authority as king, that it's already beginning. It isn't just at the end of time. He tells Pilate, he says, my kingdom is not of this world. And I think sometimes we hear that and we might think, well, that means that while we're in this world, Christ isn't king. And that's not true either. It's not of this world, but it's breaking into this world. The kingship of Christ, the kingdom of Christ, is something that's breaking out into the world as we speak. and that's happening through the church. Right? It's clear that that is what Christ desires for people to belong to his kingdom. Is baptism, is the wedding garment of the sacraments, that is what it is. And so anywhere that people are living the church and are in the church and are involved in that is the kingdom of Christ breaking out into the world through you and I, right? And through the church, and Christ desires that. So it isn't just something that happens later, it's breaking out into our world through the church. The final thing that I wanted to think about then, or just put forward for you as we recognize all of that Christ is king, that we as the young man knows, we genuflect when we come into his presence. He is king of a kingdom. He is king of the church. He is king of our lives. The final thing I get us to think about that is that, are we thankful for his leadership? Right? Are we thankful for Christ's leadership in our lives? We've all had probably people that we've worked for who have been a boss for us that we haven't liked, right? And we've probably had people that were in leadership position or coach or CEO or office manager that we have really liked, right? That have done a good job, that we appreciate, that we had no problem getting behind and following, right? We're very thankful for those good leaders that we've had in our lives, those people that have helped us. We want to have that. We desire that. And we're thankful for that. When we have those kinds of people in our lives, when we have good teachers, good bosses, whatever listing of the position, any authority, anybody that's good for us and is kind, but is clear, and the expectations are there, but it's not beating us over the head with it, but it's clear that there will be correction if we fall, those kinds of things. We all appreciate that, and we're really thankful for it, right? Like you run into somebody, particularly if they've had a bad boss, when they get a good boss, it's like they won the lottery, because they did. There's that sense. But here's the thing, right? Like, I never hear that, and I don't, this is my issue too, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about Jesus that way, right? My temptation or my tendency isn't to think of, or talk about or think, in that way of like, wow, what an amazing job Christ is doing as my king for me. Like, what an amazing job he's doing for me. I always think about the things that, or I'm tempted to think, sometimes about the things that he's asking me to do that I don't want to do, the changes that he's asking me to make in my life that I don't want to make, the things that are required of me, that, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, how often do we just sit back and do we just say, Christ is king? I believe that, I recognize that, and I'm thankful for it. Like, I recognize, like, look back through your life and look at all of the times where you trusted the kingship and the authority that Christ has over your life, and did it ever go badly? Right? Like, did that ever go badly? He's infinitely better for us than a good boss that we had, or someone that was in authority, or a good coach, or a good parent, right? Like, Christ is infinitely more than that for us as the ruler of the world, a creator of the world, and everything that he does for us. Are we thankful for that? Do we appreciate that? We go tell our friends, right? We go tell anybody that would listen. If we had a bad boss and then we got a good one, we talk about it at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and everywhere else. Call everybody that we could. Yeah, I got a great boss. It's great. He or she is wonderful. Do we do that with Jesus? Right? And that's all I wanted to just invite us to think about tonight in this celebration of Christ the King. Is Christ the King of your life? He probably is, because you're here tonight. You're a part of the church. You recognize that this kingdom's breaking out. You come to Mass. You reverence. You genuflect. You worship. You praise. You give him thanks. You recognize that he's here. You listen to him, as do I. But are you thankful for the leadership and the things that he is doing in your life and has done for us and for you and I in the past? And if so, maybe it's time that we let other people know about that and recognize it ourselves, and come back and regularly tell him thank you.